Chapter 2382. The battle between the two of them caused the surrounding air to be filled with a powerful spiritual aura and pressure. A few of the patriarchs of the hidden families felt uncomfortable under the powerful pressure and immediately waved their hands to disperse the powerful pressure for them. They looked at each other as the fight became more and more intense. Although Zhuo Junyue was strong, he was not at a disadvantage after a long fight. The great elder of the Luo family was attacking more fiercely, as if he wanted to vent his anger by injuring Zhuo Junyue, just as the master of the Luo family had said. Therefore, the great elder of the Luo family attacked so fiercely that their hearts skipped a beat. The eldest and second young masters of the Luo family couldn't help but worry. It seemed like their father really wanted to teach them a lesson in this competition. Otherwise, the great elder wouldn't have acted so fiercely. However, in their opinion, this was too much. After all, Zhuo Junyue and the others had not done anything unforgivable. If they injured them just to vent their anger, it seemed. They looked at each other and came to their father's side to persuade him. "Father, it's good that the fight is over. Ask the great elder to be merciful. It's better for everyone to be merciful. You don't have to worry about this. I know what to do," the master of the Luo family said in a low voice as he glanced at them warningly. "Father," the first young master wanted to persuade him, but he was pulled aside by the two elders. "Eldest young master, the patriarch has his own ideas. Not only did the marriage fail, but he also caused our Luo family to become a joke. Furthermore, the two of them forced their way into our Luo residence. It is only right that we teach them a lesson," an elder said, indicating for the two of them to stop talking. The first young master sighed and shook his head. He did not say anything else. On the other side, Feng Jiu heard their conversation. She only glanced at eldest young master Luo and looked away indifferently. She looked at Zhuo Junyue and saw that he had stepped back when he dodged the great elder of the Luo family's attack. He spun around and landed outside the ring. Just as the Luo clan's head elder wanted to take advantage of the situation to pursue, he realized that Zhuo Junyue had already fallen outside the circle. At that moment he was slightly taken aback. He frowned slightly as he glanced at Zhuo Junyue before retreating. However, his expression showed that he was unwilling to admit defeat without injuring Zhuo Junyue. The Luo family master's eyes darkened when he saw this. He glanced at Zhuo Junyue, pursed his lips and looked away. The first young master of the Luo family sighed in relief. The fourth young mistress of the Luo family, who was hiding nearby, did not come over. Seeing that he was not injured, she heaved a sigh of relief, and her anxious heart finally relaxed. She stared blankly at Zhuo Junyue, who was standing outside the circle with one hand behind his back. She could not help but feel a sense of reluctance and infatuation as she looked at his cold and expressionless face. She had taken a liking to him at first sight. Even among the younger generation of the Luo family, none of them were as outstanding as him. Not to mention the Luo family, even the other families didn't have any young men that could compare to him. Chapter 2383. The heads of the reclusive families looked at each other, then stepped forward and announced, "The Luo family wins the first round." Once the voice, which contained the aura of spiritual energy, was heard clearly by the people around. When the people of the Luo family heard it, they all smiled, as they were very satisfied with the result. The second round begins. Both sides send out your people. When the second round began, Han Yuanzi squinted his eyes and smiled at Feng Jiu, saying, "I'll go and meet them." After he finished speaking, his figure flashed, and he appeared in the arena. Seeing that it was the old man, the people of the Luo family looked at each other, then sent out a middle-aged man. When they saw that the Luo family had sent out a middle-aged man, whose strength was at the early stage of the fairy realm, the eyes of the people of the reclusive families flashed. They knew that the Luo family intended to admit defeat in the second round, as they could not win against the old man, so they could only send out a random person to fight. However, even if they lost the second round, it would only be a draw. When it came to the third round and the final battle, they could still turn the situation around and win. After the announcement of the start of the third round, the old man in the arena instantly made his move. His body moved as fast as lightning, and before the middle-aged man could react, he was already behind him. He directly grabbed the middle-aged man's shoulder with one hand, then put his other hand on the middle-aged man's arm and twisted it. The crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard, and at the same time, the middle-aged man's cry of surprise and pain could be heard. Ah! This scene came too suddenly. They knew that the old man's strength was unfathomable, but they did not expect him to be so fast. Moreover, he had twisted the middle-aged man's arm in one move. The sound of bones cracking was crisp and clear. Even if they weren't injured, it still made their scalps go numb and their hearts clench. This was especially so for the people of the Luo family. When they saw this scene, their faces were as black as charcoal, and their gazes fell on the old man like knives. At this time, they all felt that the old man had gone too far, breaking their man's arm in one move. However, they did not expect that in the previous round, the great elder had already attacked ruthlessly, and every move was close to being fatal. There was almost no need for a fight to determine the winner of this round. However, the old man did not stop there. He did not even give the middle-aged man a chance to admit defeat. He grabbed the middle-aged man's neck from behind, and when everyone thought that he was going to kill the middle-aged man, they saw him twist the middle-aged man's feet off the ground. In the next moment, he raised his leg and kicked the middle-aged man's knee. Crack! Hiss! Ah! Another bone-cracking sound rang out, accompanied by a heart-wrenching scream. A dignified fairy realm cultivator was completely powerless against the old man, and could only be beaten and abused. When the surrounding people saw this, they couldn't help but gasp in shock. Get out! The old man grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him out of the circle. When the people of the Luo family saw this, they quickly rushed forward and caught the middle-aged man with a pale face. You can't even withstand a single blow. The old man snorted coldly, and his gaze was filled with disdain as he looked at the head of the Luo family. It was as if he was saying, "Look at the people of the Luo family. None of them are capable." Chapter 2384. As if sensing his gaze, Fengjiu, who was carrying the child, glanced indifferently at the Luo family head. When she saw that he had averted his gaze and was looking forward, she curled her lips and laughed silently. This was just the beginning, and he was already anxious? No one had expected the second round to end so quickly, and it was an overwhelming victory. When the crowd saw that the middle-aged man from the Luo family had his arms and legs broken, they all quieted down and did not make a single sound. When they saw the middle-aged man's broken arms and legs, the crowd had a strange expression, and they could not help but recall what the Luo family head had said to the Luo family. However, no one had expected that before the Luo family could even injure their opponent, they had already suffered heavy losses, and a fairy realm cultivator's arms and legs had been broken just like that. After calming down, the few family heads of the hidden families looked at each other and nodded slightly. Then they said, "The Luo family has lost the second round." When their voices reached the ears of the Luo family members, they had a very different feeling. Because of this, their gazes fell on the green-robed man who was carrying the child. In their opinion, this person was too weak to even stand up to a gust of wind, and would not be able to withstand a single blow. Any one of them could easily defeat him. Since the old man had injured their man to such an extent, this young man was probably going to be in trouble in this round. The old man flicked his sleeves and walked back to Fengjiu's side. As he stroked his beard, he shook his head and said to Fengjiu, "These people are too weak. I haven't even done anything, and they've already lost. Sigh, with my strength and status, it's really embarrassing for me to fight with such a person." When he heard this, the Luo family head was so angry that he gritted his teeth. The strength of a fairy realm cultivator was too weak. He was looking down on the Luo family. Now it's a tie. The final round will determine the winner and loser. The family head of the hidden families said, and let them compete in the final round. The child in Fengjiu's arms had already woken up. At this moment, he was blinking his beautiful eyes and looking at her. He did not cry or make a fuss, and was very obedient. "I'll carry him," the old man said and pointed at the child in her arms. Fengjiu replied and handed the child to him. "Don't let the pressure around him hurt." "I know. Who do you think I am? You don't even know this?" He waved his hand to reassure her. Thus, Fengjie stepped forward and looked at the people from the Luo family. When she saw the patriarch of the Luo clan instructing one of them to come out and fight, she couldn't help but narrow her eyes and reveal a smile. Her clear and unhurried voice carried a trace of laziness as it spread out unhurriedly. I think it's best if the Luo family's patriarch comes out for this final battle. Hearing that, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Fengjie to say that. When the people of the Luo family heard this, their eyes were filled with disdain. One of them shouted, "You think you can make our patriarch take action? You're overestimating yourself." Fengjie smirked. Overconfident? Her clear eyes fell on the patriarch of the Luo family, and she said unhurriedly, "Could it be that as the patriarch of the Luo family, you don't even dare to accept my challenge?" Hearing that, the patriarch of the Luo family's face darkened. His hands, which were clenched behind his back, were tightly clenched into fists. Cracking sounds could be heard as if he was angry. Chapter 2385. Regret. Fengjie raised his chin slightly, and his eyebrows were full of confidence. I never do things that I regret. Fine. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish, Patriarch Luo said with a gloomy face. He waved his hand and signaled for his clansmen to step down. Then, he stepped forward and stood in front of Fengjie. Everyone's eyes flickered when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with interest. At this moment, they could not help but be curious about the strength of the man in green. If he was not 100% confident, how would he dare to challenge the patriarch of the Luo family? Moreover, Shui Junyue and the old man only watched quietly and did not stop him. It seemed that the two of them trusted him very much. If that was the case, how terrifying was this man's strength? To be able to conceal his true strength in front of so many people. It was obvious that he was stronger than all of them. However, his bone age showed that he was only a young man in his 20s. Did he really have such terrifying strength? The patriarchs of the reclusive families looked at each other and thought to themselves. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game better than the player. They could see clearly that this young man was not easy to deal with. However, Patriarch Luo did not see this clearly. Some of them shook their heads while others sighed. In the end they said, "The third round begin." No matter who won or lost, there had to be a result. Let's just wait and see. Perhaps they were overthinking things. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Patriarch Luo put one hand behind his back and looked sharply at Fengjie. Then, he said in a low and contemptuous voice, "I only need one hand to deal with someone like you." As soon as he finished speaking, spiritual energy surged from his hand. Then he charged toward Fengjie and struck out with his palm. His momentum was so swift that he was not much slower than Han Yuanzi in the previous round. As soon as he made his move, the patriarchs of the reclusive families gasped and exclaimed, "Brother Luo has reached the intermediate stage of the celestial sage stage." With such strength against that young man, even if he only used one hand, he would be able to beat him to a pulp. It seemed that their previous worries were unnecessary. They shifted their gazes towards the young man, who was quietly standing there without moving. They saw that he was actually not alarmed or fearful in the face of an expert, like the head of the Luo family. Moreover, there was a faint mocking smile on his face. Seeing the expression on the young man's face, the few of them could not help but feel somewhat puzzled. It was only when the Luo family's patriarch's palm strike was right in front of the young man's eyes that their hearts were slightly raised for him, that they saw him speak in a neither hurried nor slow manner. "You want to defeat me with one hand? You might be overconfident." Fengjie's soft voice carried a trace of laziness. She looked at the palm that was coming towards her and gently shifted her feet. Her figure flashed like a ghost, and in the blink of an eye, she had already arrived behind Patriarch Luo while avoiding his attack. Then she lifted her leg and kicked him effortlessly. Yes, the knee of his hind leg was unexpectedly kicked, and the force of the kick caused his knee to involuntarily bend down. His entire body was thrown forward in a slightly awkward manner. Chapter 2386. Let's not talk about using only one hand. If you don't use your full strength, I reckon you'll lose miserably. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure shot out like a bolt of lightning. Her speed was so fast that the people around her could not see her figure or her movements clearly. With the previous kick due to his carelessness, Patriarch Luo became vigilant and no longer underestimated his opponent. He stared at the figure that was coming towards him. Just as he was about to make a move, he saw the figure that was originally a few meters away flashing past him. He didn't know when the figure had already arrived in front of him. The figure kicked him from the bottom up and hit his chin, causing his entire body to flip over. Hiss! Ah! Patriarch Luo gasped in pain. The crowd watched as he was sent flying. Just as he was about to fall out of the circle and reach the line of defeat, the green figure flashed forward and kicked him in the abdomen, sending him flying towards the center of the circle. Patriarch Luo's blood-curdling scream rang out in the arena. When the crowd saw him fall from the air and sprawled on the ground, they could not help but gasp in shock. They looked at the young man who was standing with his hands behind his back in disbelief. How is this possible? Patriarch Luo is a mid-level celestial saint. How can he be so powerless in front of this young man? He can't even dodge his attack. Could it be that this young man is stronger than Patriarch Luo? Everyone from the Luo family was stunned when they saw their patriarch being beaten up by the man in green to the point where he could not even fight back. They stared at the scene in astonishment. They could not believe that their patriarch was no match for the man in green. In the entire arena, only the old man, Zhuo Junyue, remained calm and indifferent. It was as if he already knew that this would happen and was not surprised at all. Fengjiu pursed her lips as she looked at Patriarch Luo, who was powerless to fight back. She felt a little bored. With her current strength, she could crush him with just her spiritual force. Attacking a mid-level celestial saint was not enough to arouse her fighting spirit. However, she could not stand Patriarch Luo's character. Not only did he capture Zhuo Junyue and cast the heart-binding curse on him, he even tampered with his memories. This was really disgraceful. In the end, he felt embarrassed and wanted to break the three of their limbs. Since that was the case, she naturally had to return the favor. A serene light flashed across her eyes as the corners of her lips curled into a devilish smile. Her gaze fell upon Patriarch Luo, who was staring at her in alarm. Suddenly, her figure flashed and she appeared behind him in an instant. At the same time, her hand clasped onto his shoulder. Patriarch Luo, let me return the favor. Otherwise, it would be too disrespectful. An evil yet gentle voice sounded behind Patriarch Luo, causing his expression to change. It was as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake or a ferocious beast. His body trembled, and he could not help but feel fear. What do you want? Patriarch Luo's admit defeat. Patriarch Luo. Luo's patriarchs. Luo of the of ones of A's of them. As soon as she finished speaking, she moved her hand up and down, and the bones in Patriarch Luo's shoulder and arm started to make cracking sounds, as if the bones were being crushed. In just a breath's time, Patriarch Luo's hand fell limply to the ground, as if it didn't have any bones in it. Chapter 2387. However, it was not just Luo's hand. Even his other hand was hanging limply by his side. It all happened so quickly that no one could stop it or react in time. Father! Eldest young Master Luo exclaimed. He was the first to react and rush forward. However, he was hit by a small stone and was rooted to the spot. It's not over yet. What are you going to do? The old man's cold voice rang out. He glanced at eldest young Master Luo with the child in his arms, and then looked away. He then swept his gaze across the rest of the Luo family, with a warning look in his eyes. Perhaps it was because of Fengjiu's strength or the old man's warning look, but no one from the Luo family dared to step forward. They only looked at their patriarch, whose hands were hanging limply by his side, with their mouths slightly agape and their bodies trembling. What was going on? What happened to their patriarch's hands? When Fengjiu dragged Patriarch Luo out of the circle by his collar, she walked step by step toward Patriarch Luo, who was lying on the ground outside the circle. She looked at Patriarch Luo's face, which was contorted in pain, and said in a lazy voice, Patriarch Luo, you've lost. Your Luo family has lost. You have to honor your words. Patriarch Luo was lying on the ground. He could not get up due to the lack of strength in his hands. He could only look at the young man who was standing next to him and speaking to him in a condescending manner. At this moment, he felt ashamed and resentful. He had never thought that he would lose to a young man one day. Moreover, he had lost so thoroughly and pathetically in front of so many people. Father. Patriarch. At this moment, the people from the Luo family rushed over and helped him up from the ground. The elders from the Luo family were speechless when they saw the young man in front of them. Who would have thought that a young man whom they had never taken seriously would defeat their patriarch and even injure him to this extent? Now that their Luo clan had lost, they had to apologize to them in front of everyone and give them the herbs they needed. They could even pick any 10 herbs they wanted from the Luo clan's 100 medicine garden. Just thinking about it made them feel unwilling. However, the Luo family's strength was not as good as theirs. They had to honor their words in front of the other reclusive families. At this moment, they felt that they had suffered a double loss. If they had known this would happen, they would have given them the herbs earlier. The few patriarchs from the reclusive families walked over and asked Fengjiu, "Sir, what happened to Patriarch Luo's hands?" Fengjiu glanced at them and said, "Do you still need to ask me about something so obvious?" When they heard this, their hearts skipped a beat. Patriarch Luo's hands were crippled. Their eyes flickered when they thought of this. Even if he was from a reclusive family, as the patriarch of a family, even if his strength had reached the intermediate immortal saint realm, he would still have to step down if his hands were crippled. Moreover, if his hands were not healed, the combat strength of the Luo family would be weakened. Without an intermediate immortal saint expert, the decline of the family was imaginable. Chapter 2388. May I know how to address you? An aged yet dignified voice came from nearby. When they heard that voice, the eyes of the Luo family's people lit up. They all turned around and knelt down towards the direction of the voice as they spoke at the same time. "Greetings, ancestor." As it turned out, when they saw that the situation was not good, a family elder ran to invite the Luo family's ancestor. The Luo family's ancestor, who originally did not think much of it, came out to take a look. When he saw that the Luo family's master's hands were crippled, his face could not help but sink. However, when his gaze landed on the green-clothed young man, his face could not help but become serious. With his strength and cultivation, he actually could not see through the young man's strength and cultivation. It was no wonder that the Luo family's master would lose to such a young man. "Ancestor." When the Luo family's master saw the ancestor slowly walking over, he went forward with the support of the crowd and knelt down in shame. "Ancestor." Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by the ancestor who raised his hand. When the other hidden family's masters saw that even the Luo family's ancestor had come out, they could not help but look at each other. Only then did they go forward and clasp their hands in respect before retreating to the side. However, the Luo family's ancestor's gaze swept past the others and landed on Fengjiu. He saw that she was standing there neither arrogantly nor humbly. Her green clothes were simple and unremarkable, but she was emitting a noble temperament and the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. With just a glance, he did not dare to treat her as an ordinary cultivator. "I am the Luo family's ancestor. I have been in seclusion in the back mountain for a long time, and have not cared about the family's matters for many years. What did you do to offend the Luo family's master to the extent that you personally crippled his hands?" Fengjiu also looked at the old man, who was slowly walking over, when the people from the Luo family turned around and knelt down. She sized him up without batting an eyelid. Now that she heard his words, she chuckled and asked, "So the people from the Luo family who went to invite you didn't tell you about it?" She looked mockingly at the clansman behind the Luo family's ancestor and slowly said, "If you don't, I don't mind saying it again. After all, only your Luo family will be humiliated in the end. It has nothing to do with us." Hearing this, the patriarch of the Luo family frowned. He glanced at the patriarch of the Luo family, who was standing stiffly in front of him. Then, he looked at the Luo family members who had their heads lowered. Looking at the situation, how could he not know that the Luo family was in the wrong? "Even if my Luo family is being unreasonable, It is still too much for your highness to cripple his hands. Furthermore, a country has its laws, and a family has its rules. If my Luo family's family head has truly mishandled this matter, this old man, as the Luo family's ancestor, will naturally not be biased. Ha 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 ha. Old man Luo, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Your words are quite pleasing to my ears. It's a pity that you don't care about what's going on outside. Otherwise, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Han Yuanzi handed the child to Zhuo Junyue and walked forward. When the Luo family's patriarch heard the laughter, he was stunned for a moment. He felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. When he looked in the direction of the laughter, and saw the person walking over, his expression changed slightly. He exclaimed in a low voice, "Why is it you?" Chapter 2389. Seeing this, everyone could not help but be slightly stunned. The Luo family patriarch knew that old man? Moreover, why did the Luo family patriarch look as if he was afraid of him like a venomous snake? Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows when she saw this. She was a little surprised. Han Yuanzi came to Feng Jiu's side and looked at the vigilant Luo family patriarch. He stroked his beard and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be the Luo family patriarch. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble." He only knew that the old man's surname was Luo, but who knew that he was the Luo family patriarch? He looked at Han Yuanzi, then at Feng Jiu, and finally at the Luo family patriarch. He shouted angrily, "How did you provoke this old god of plague? Tell me the truth." He was angry. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Luo family patriarch. Why did he have to provoke this Han Yuan? Was this old thing someone that could be provoked so easily? Decades ago, those who met him could only admit that they were unlucky. Who dared to fight with him? He had not seen this old god of plague for so many years, but who knew that he would meet him in the Luo family's territory today? If he had known it was him, he would not have come out. "You old man, what nonsense are you talking about? What god of plague? You should be more polite with your words." Han Yuanzi snorted, as if he did not like the words old god of plague. Everyone from the Luo family, and those from the reclusive families were startled by this scene, and their eyes fell on the Luo family patriarch. The Luo family patriarch's heart sank when he heard his patriarch's words. He looked up at the patriarch and saw that he was slightly angry. The Luo family patriarch was glaring at him, and he could not say anything. "Great elder, you tell me," the Luo family patriarch shouted, and looked at the great elder. The great elder's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at the old ancestor of the Luo family, and then at the head of the Luo family. Finally, he walked up to the old ancestor of the Luo family, and explained the matter in a low voice. After listening to the first elder's explanation, the Luo family's ancestor's face darkened. His sharp and dignified eyes were filled with disappointment as he looked at the Luo family head. He shook his head and said in a deep voice, "From today onwards, he was stripped of his position as the head of the family. His eldest son, Luo Yisheng, would succeed him as the patriarch. Someone come, take him away, and let him face the cliff to reflect on his mistakes." As soon as these words were spoken, the Luo family went into an uproar. They all widened their eyes in disbelief. The Luo family had also raised his head to look at the Luo family ancestor in astonishment. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He was still so young. How could he step down from the position of patriarch just like that? And in such a way? The eldest young master of the Luo family, Luo Yisheng, was stunned when he heard the patriarch's words. He hurriedly said, "Patriarch, Yisheng is too young to take on such an important task. Although my father was at fault, he has already been punished. Both of his hands are seriously injured. Please forgive him." "That's right, Patriarch. Now that Patriarch's hands are seriously injured by that young master, even if it's our fault, this matter should be settled. Please forgive him." The people of the Luo family pleaded for mercy. After all, Patriarch Luo's strength was at the intermediate immortal saint realm. He was the only one who could suppress the people below him. Although Luo Yisheng was outstanding, he was not as strong as his father. For the sake of the Luo family, they could only beg the patriarch to forgive him. Humph. Chapter 2390. Everyone could not help but look at Fengjiu and Han Yuanzi when they saw this. The first young master of the Luo family came before Han Yuanzi and was about to plead. Senior. However, he was stopped by Han Yuanzi. I don't care about your family matters. Don't tell me, don't tell me. He waved his hand and looked at the Luo family patriarch. Old man Luo, since you're here, you should quickly settle this matter. We don't have the time to stay here. The Luo family patriarch's face darkened when he heard this. He glanced at the stunned members of the Luo family and said, What are you waiting for? Take him away. Yes. The members of the Luo family saw that the patriarch's face had darkened, so they quickly went forward to take family head Luo away. The first young master of the Luo family moved his lips, but could not say anything in the end. Everyone, it's not convenient for the Luo family to entertain you. Please leave first. The patriarch of the Luo family said to the family heads of the reclusive families and asked someone to take them away. Thus they bowed and left with their people. Soon, only the members of the Luo family, Fengjiu, and a few others were left in the large martial arts field. Go and bring the herbs they asked for to the front yard. The patriarch of the Luo family said. Then, he turned to the few of them and said, I'll take you to the 100-herb garden to pick 10 spiritual herbs yourselves. That's more like it. Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? The patriarch of the Luo family smiled and stroked his beard in satisfaction. He glanced at Fengjiu and Zhuo Junyue. The patriarch of the Luo family glanced at Zhuo Junyue and looked at Fengjiu. He asked, How should I address you? Where did this person come from? Could it be that the young people in the outside world had become so powerful after so many years in seclusion? Fengjiu curled his lips and looked at the patriarch of the Luo family. He said softly, Fengjiu. Fengjiu? He had never heard of this name before. However, he had to find out who this Fengjiu was. He nodded and gestured for them to enter. This way, please. With him personally leading Fengjiu and the others to the 100-herb garden, no one from the Luo clan dared to say anything. They could only hope that they didn't know about spiritual herbs and couldn't recognize the precious herbs in their garden. However, when Fengjiu stepped into the 100-medicine garden, she walked around in a leisurely pace. With a sweep of her gaze, she roughly saw all the medicinal herbs inside. Thus, she picked out 10 rare medicinal herbs that were not in her spiritual medicine space. When the 10 herbs were placed in front of the Luo family's ancestor, the corner of his mouth twitched. He looked at Fengjiu with a strange and pained expression. Young Master Feng knows medicine? I know a thing or two. Fengjiu smiled. He was in a good mood after obtaining 10 rare herbs. He had dug out the 10 most precious and rare spirit herbs in his Luo family's herb garden. Yet he only knew a little? The patriarch of the Luo family cursed inwardly. He felt that this young man was as evil as Han Yuan. Fengjiu put the herbs into the spiritual medicine space and walked with them to the hall in the front yard to collect the herbs that Zhuo Junyue needed. It's getting late. Why don't you stay for the night and leave tomorrow? The patriarch of the Luo family asked them. Chapter 2391. Seeing this, the Luo clan's ancestor did not stay any longer. He personally sent them out. After watching them leave his sight, he let out a sigh of relief. He felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. Not to mention the old man, Fengjiu. The young man's strength was unfathomable. The Luo family could not afford to offend him. Losing a dozen rare spiritual herbs to send him away was better than bringing disaster to the Luo family and implicating the entire family. Seeing him heave a sigh of relief, the first elder asked, Ancestor, do you know the 3 of them? The Luo family's ancestor glanced at him and said in a deep voice, Those 3 are not to be trifled with. Compared to the old man, the young man called Fengjiu is truly unfathomable. He paused and stared at the first elder. As the Luo family's first elder, why didn't you stop him when he made a mistake? Do you know that if this matter is not handled properly, the young man called Fengjiu alone can destroy the entire Luo family? Hearing this, the first elder was shocked, and his face turned pale. Is that young man really that powerful? His strength is definitely above mine. The Luo family's ancestor said in a deep voice, and left without saying anything else. Hearing this, the first elder felt cold sweat drench his clothes, and a lingering fear surged in his heart. On the other side, after Fengjiu and the others left the Luo family's residence, they spent the night in the forest. When the sun rose the next morning, they left the area on their swords and headed back. That evening, they arrived at a small town and prepared to find a place to rest. After entering the town, Fengjiu said to the two of them, "You two go find an inn first. I'll go to the market and see if there's anything for Hao to eat." "Okay, we'll pick the closest place to stay. When the time comes you'll be fine," the old man said, and went to the inn with Zhujunyue. Fengjiu, who was carrying a child to the market, attracted many curious gazes. In this place, it was rare for a man to carry a child out, especially a man who was more beautiful than a woman. "Do you think this man is a woman dressed as a man? How could there be such a handsome man in the world? You're carrying a child. They do look alike. That appearance is rare even for a woman, let alone a man." Some people on the street were discussing, and some men at the corner of the street stared at Fengjiu, who was wearing green clothes and carrying a child. They held their chins with one hand and looked at her with wretched eyes. Fengjiu bought some snacks in the market and saw someone milking cows and sheep. He went up to buy some freshly squeezed goat milk and went to the tailor shop to buy more than 10 sets of children's clothes. After putting everything into her space, she turned the corner and was about to walk towards the inn when she saw a few ruffians in the alley blocking her way, staring at her maliciously. "Big brother, this kid looks so good. Is he a girl?" A local ruffian asked the person in front of him. How hard is it to find out if it's a man or a woman? Why don't we just grab him and strip him?" The leader of the ruffians smiled wretchedly and said, "But with this kid's looks, whether he's a man or a woman, he'll definitely fetch a good price." Chapter 2392. The moment the pressure enveloped them, their bodies stiffened, and they knelt down with a thud. Their faces were deathly pale, and their eyes widened in fear. Beads of cold sweat the size of beads seeped out of their foreheads and dripped down. They watched as the young man walked past them with the child in his arms. He didn't even say a word, but they could feel the aura of death looming over them. When the figure passed by them, they only felt a rush of blood rushing up from below. With a pu sound, they spat out mouthfuls of blood and fell down one after another. When Fengjiu arrived at the inn, she saw the old man and Zhujunyue sitting in the corner of the hall on the first floor. She walked over and took out a few hot scallion pancakes from her space and placed them on the table. "I bought them when I came back. Try them, they taste pretty good." The two of them were drinking tea. When they saw her take out the pancakes, they took a piece and ate it. The old man asked, "Did you find anything for the child to eat?" "Yes, I bought some goat's milk," she said, and asked the two of them, "Have you ordered anything? Have you booked a room?" "We haven't booked a room yet. We just went up to take a look. This inn is relatively small, but it's already full. We're sitting here to wait for you to come over and check out the other inns. We ordered a few signature dishes, but there's nothing for the child to eat." Fengjiu nodded and called the waiter over. She took out a bottle of goat's milk. "Sir, what can I do for you?" The waiter walked over with a smile and poured a cup of tea for Fengjiu. "Bring this goat's milk to your kitchen and heat it up." She flipped her hand and a piece of silver fell into the waiter's hand. "This is for you." When the waiter saw this, he smiled until his eyes narrowed into a line. He quickly nodded and said, "This little one will do it right away." As he said this, he put the silver into his pocket and took the milk to the kitchen. "When we go back, bring your brother to my place. I have plenty of places for him to stay, and it'll be easier for me to treat him," Fengjiu said to Zhujunyue. "All right." He nodded and looked at her, saying, "Thank you. I don't treat you as outsiders, so there's no need to thank me." She smiled and took a sip of tea. Then she heard the old man's laughter. "Why are you drinking tea in a place like this? Let them serve the wine, we'll have a good meal," he said excitedly, and waved for the waiter to serve the wine. Not long after, the dishes and wine were served. Even the goat milk was heated and served. Fengjiu first fed the child, then asked the waiter to bring 2 chairs together and put the child on the chair to sleep. The few of them ate and chatted for a while. When night fell, they found an inn in town to rest. However, in the second half of the night, The three people who were sleeping soundly in the room faintly heard some uneasy movements. Because Fengjiu and Howard slept in one room, the old man and Zhuojunhua slept in another. When they heard the movements, Zhuojunhua asked, "Should we go take a look?" The old man slept on the bed on the right. When he heard Zhuojunhua's words, he turned over without opening his eyes and said, "Do you think she's like you? Can't even protect yourself? Go to sleep. These people aren't here for us anyway. Don't meddle in their business." Chapter 2393. In the dead of the night, the cries for help entered his ears. His heart could not calm down. Thus he lifted the blanket, put on his coat and walked out. After he went out, the old man shook his head and got up helplessly. Although this old man was not someone who liked to meddle in other people's business, the cries for help did indeed make his heart a mess. It was reasonable to say that he did not have the ability to save people, but he clearly had the ability. If he kept pretending to be asleep, even if no one said anything about it, he would not feel good. "Sigh, this old man is kind-hearted," he muttered to himself, and went out with his hands behind his back. However, when the two of them came outside, they saw that someone had already arrived outside. That figure was only wearing a white inner garment and a green outer garment. In his arms was a child who did not cry or make a fuss. He just sat on the roof and watched. Fengjiu held Hao who was blinking his clear eyes and looking around, with one hand supporting his chin as he watched the scene below. The few guards were protecting a pair of 8 or 9-year-old twins. From the twins' clothes, they should be the children of a rich family. In addition to the guards protecting them, there was also an old man guarding by their side. However, after another group of black-clothed men came, the old man was obviously unable to withstand it. Several wounds had already been inflicted on his body by the black-clothed men. The twins were obviously frightened. The two of them hugged each other tightly and curled up at the side. Other than crying, they were shouting for help. However, looking around, no one came out to participate in this kind of thing. Even some of the rooms where the lights were still on turned off after hearing the commotion outside. They did not dare to make a sound. Seeing a black-clothed man's sharp sword slashing towards the two children with a fierce aura, she moved her finger, and a silver needle shot out with a whoosh. The black-clothed man groaned and fell silently. Because of this, the black-clothed men all looked in her direction. "Kid, do you want to die?" A black-clothed man shouted and strode towards her. The hand holding the long sword surged with spiritual power, and a murderous aura pervaded the air. Fengjiu casually glanced at the black-clothed man. With a turn of her finger, 2 more silver needles appeared and attacked as the black-clothed man walked over. The black-clothed man was already prepared and blocked with the long sword in his hand. With a clang, a trace of sparks burst out from the blade. "Ha ha ha! You want to kill me with just a hidden weapon? You are really Before the black-clothed man finished speaking, a drop of cinnabar-like blood seeped out from between his eyebrows. Seeing this, one of the twins immediately pulled the person beside him and quickly ran towards Fengjiu. The two of them were obviously also cultivators. Raising their spiritual power aura, they stepped on the breeze and headed towards the roof where Fengjiu was. Seeing this, Fengjiu only raised her eyebrows. Seeing the twins coming towards her, the black-clothed men launched several hidden weapons at her. With a flick of her finger, several strands of spiritual power shot out and repelled the hidden weapons. Muffled groans and miserable cries sounded, and 2 more black-clothed men fell. Seeing this scene, the old man who was injured protecting the children glanced at Fengjiu and loudly said, "Many thanks to young master for saving us." Chapter 2394. When the old man and Zhuojunhua saw this scene, the former stroked his beard and smiled, while the latter's gaze fell on Fengjiu. Those who were more powerful did not want to get involved in these matters. However, ever since they met Fengjiu, she had never lost her kindness. As long as she felt that she should save someone, she would help regardless of whether she knew them or not. This was very rare for someone with her cultivation. The twins came to Fengjiu's side, but they didn't dare to get too close. They just stood about a meter away from her and looked at her. Seeing that she didn't respond, the twins looked down. Seeing that the old man and his guards were covered in wounds, Fengjiu glanced at Zhuo Junyue. Didn't you come out to help? What are you waiting for? Hearing this, Zhuo Junyue stretched out his hand. With a flash of light, a sharp longsword appeared in his hand. Like a dragon, he swept past and joined the battle. Seeing that there were indeed experts among the black-clothed men, Han Yuanzi also stepped in to help. With the help of the two, the situation was quickly reversed. The remaining black-clothed men were no match for the black-clothed men. Seeing that the situation was not good, they quickly retreated with their injuries. With the crisis averted, the old man bowed to Fengjiu and the others. Thank you for saving us, benefactors. The remaining two guards stood behind the old man and bowed to them. Thank you, benefactors. The two children knelt because they knew that if Fengjiu and the others had not come out to save them, they would not have survived. I didn't save you. I was just woken up by the noise. As Fengjiu spoke, she stood up with the children in her arms and walked down, preparing to return to her room to rest. Seeing this, the twins were stunned and did not know what to do. When the old man saw that the three of them had turned to return to their room, he opened his mouth to say something. But in the end, he did not say anything. He only let the two children down after watching them disappear from his sight. Bandage your wounds, the old man said to the two guards. The old man said to the two guards. He glanced at the corpse on the ground and asked them to clean it up. Only then did he bring the two children into the inn. Second grandpa, are we not leaving now? Will those people who stayed here come again? The two children asked with lingering fear in their eyes. No, they won't dare to come tonight. You two go back to your room and have a good sleep. Second grandpa is here, don't worry. The old man comforted them, his wrinkled hands gently patting the two children's heads. Hearing the old man's words, the two children nodded and entered the inn without another word. After the old man brought the two of them back to their rooms to rest, he came out and stood guard outside the door. He looked thoughtfully at the other two rooms, and no one knew what he was thinking. He waited outside the guest room for a long time. In the end, he got the two guards to guard the guest room, while he went to a room that was still lit, and knocked on the door. Benefactors. In the room, Hao-er was sleeping on the bed. Fengjiu and the others were not sleepy, because they had been woken up in the middle of the night. So they drank tea and chatted. As they were talking, they heard a knock on the door and the old man's voice. Chapter 2395. Zhuo Junyue stood up and opened the door. As soon as the door was opened, the old man bowed to Zhuo Junyue before kneeling down in front of Fengjiu. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke with a trace of helplessness in his aged voice. Young master, please save us. Seeing this, the three people in the room fell silent. Han Yuanzi glanced at the old man. This old man had the strength of a celestial sage. Among the black-clothed men tonight, there were also celestial sages. However, to his surprise, the old man's eyesight was so good that he could see that among the three of them, Fengjiu was the strongest. Fengjiu leaned back with a leisurely expression. She played with the cup on the table with one hand and asked casually, "Aren't you still alive and well? What's there to save?" "We were saved by young master and are now alive. However, if young master leaves, we will definitely be intercepted and killed on the way." The old man's eyes were filled with tears as he said, "I'm old and my death is not to be regretted. However, these two children are the only remaining seedlings of my Bai family. My Bai family risked their lives to protect them and help them escape. They are the last hope of our Bai family. I beg young master to save these two children and let them safely reach 100 Rivers City to find their sister." When Fengjiu heard the old man say that they were from the Bai family, she raised her eyebrows slightly as a thought flashed through her mind. However, it was only a thought that arose because of his words. Even she shook her head inwardly, thinking that there was no such thing as a coincidence in this world. But who would have thought that when she heard the last part about finding their sister in 100 River City, she couldn't help but look deeply at the old man and ask, "You say you are from the Bai family? You want to take these two children to 100 Rivers City to find their sister?" "Yes, I am the second grandfather of these two children. The two children are twins, and are also the youngest sons of our Bai family's patriarch. The older one is called by Yunqi, and the younger one is called by Yunlin. Their sister is called by Qingcheng. For some reason, she is now following the ghost doctor of Heavenly Pill House in 100 River City. At this point, the old man's voice was filled with sorrow. He lowered his head, so he didn't see Fengjiu and Huanyuan's expressions. The Bai clan was annihilated. Now the only people left in the Bai clan are me, these two children, and Qingcheng, who is by the side of the ghost doctor of the Heavenly Dan building in the 100 River City. I beg young master to protect us. As long as we can safely send the two children to the Heavenly Dan building to meet their elder sister and obtain the ghost doctor's protection, I am willing to work like a horse for the rest of my life to repay young master. After saying this, he respectfully kowtowed to Fengjiu. Fengjiu stared blankly at the old man who was kowtowing. He didn't ask the old man to get up, and just stared at him quietly. She did not expect that she would save Bai Qingqing's younger brothers. She did not know anything about Bai Qingqing's family, and did not ask anyone to investigate after the incident. She did not expect that her family would be wiped out. The Bai family was also a big family in the area, and it was a family with some foundation. How could it be suddenly exterminated? Moreover, this news probably hasn't spread yet. Otherwise, it would definitely cause a commotion. If it had nothing to do with her, it would be one thing. But now, she knew that these people were from the Bai family, and were more or less related to her. Now that the Bai family had been wiped out, and only these few people were left, it would be unreasonable if she didn't help. Chapter 2396. Hearing this, the old man raised his head to look at Fengjiu in surprise and thanked him happily. Thank you, young master, thank you. Zhuo Junyue sent the old man out, and closed the door again. When he returned to the table, he saw the old man stroking his beard and staring at Fengjiu. I thought you didn't like that Bai Qingqing? Why are you still thinking of helping the Bai family? Do I not like her? Fengjiu glanced at him and said, I let her work in the Heavenly Pill dispensary just to dampen her spirit. I haven't seen her for a year, and now that I've returned, she's much more pleasing to the eye than she was in the Heavenly Sun sect. She paused and took a sip of tea. Besides, didn't you hear that the Bai family was exterminated? There are only a few seedlings left. Since her sister is one of my subordinates, I will naturally help if I can. Anyway, I have nothing better to do along the way with the two of you. It's good for me to stretch my limbs and stretch my muscles. Hearing this, the old man's mouth twitched slightly. Zhuo Junyue did not say anything, and just drank his tea as if he did not hear her. The three of them drank tea and chatted for a while in the room, then went to rest. The next morning, the second master of the Bai family, who had been waiting for Fengjiu and the others, did not see them come down. He asked them again and again to confirm that they had not left. Only then did he relax and wait on the first floor. The old man and Zhuo Junyue got up first and strolled around the inn. Only Fengjiu slept until noon, and woke up to the child's cries. After feeding the baby and changing his diaper, she carried the baby downstairs. Seeing that the people on the first floor were already sitting there, eating and chatting, she walked over. You're awake? I asked the waiter to cook some porridge for you. Eat some and feed the child some, the old man said and waved for the waiter to bring the porridge up. Young master. The second master of the Bai family cupped his hands and bowed to Fengjiu. Young master. The two children followed their second master's example and bowed to Fengjiu. Take a seat. Just order whatever you want, and take some food with you on the way. We don't stop often, she said, motioning them to sit down. And she sat down with the baby in her arms. Although Fengjiu asked them to sit down and eat together, second master Bai didn't dare to let the two children sit on the same level as her. So he took them to another table and said to Fengjiu, We just ate and prepared some dry food for the road. Seeing this, Fengjiu didn't say anything else. After feeding the child some food, he also ate some himself. The group then set off for 100 River City. On the way, when they passed by a certain city, they stopped for a moment. Fengjiu left for a while, and found the business center of her forces in the city. She told them to investigate the Bai family, and then send the news back to the Heavenly Dan building. However, Just as Fengjie went into the city and Hun Yuanzi and the others were waiting for her outside the city, a group of black-robed men suddenly appeared and surrounded them. Hun Yuanzi couldn't help but stroke his beard and squint when he saw that the 30 black-robed men were all above the fairy realm. There were even a few celestial saints among them. TSK, they really know how to pick the time. Moreover, there are quite a lot of people here. Look at their strength. Even I am a little scared when I see them. Chapter 2397. Old man, it's best if you don't meddle in other people's business, lest you get into trouble, the leader of the black-robed men said in a low voice, his gloomy gaze landing on Hun Yuanzi. You've been following us all the way. Do you think I don't know? Hun Yuanzi sneered and glanced at those people. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, I'm sure that none of you will be able to leave in the end. How arrogant. As soon as the gloomy voice fell, an attack hand gesture was made. The surrounding black-robed men drew their swords and flew forward. Kill them. The gloomy voice carried a sharp killing intent. As soon as it fell, the killing intent in the air spread, enveloping the entire sky. Under the powerful pressure and killing intent, the two children could not resist and spat out a trace of blood. Seeing this, the second master, who was protecting them, quickly formed a defensive barrier to protect them. 30 people surrounded them. Fortunately, Hun Yuanzi's strength was not weak, and Zhuo Juanyue's movements were agile. Otherwise, the Bai family would have died at the hands of these people. As the battle was taking place outside the city gates, it attracted the attention of many people. However, those people did not dare to come close. Ordinary people retreated back into the city, but some cultivators watched from not far away from the city gates. 30 people are surrounding and attacking these people. In my opinion, they won't be able to survive. That's not necessarily true. That old man is very strong, and the other man's movements are not ordinary either. The old man at the side is protecting the two children, but he can't protect them all. Those black-robed men are really arrogant. They actually dare to attack in broad daylight here. These black-clothed men are all very strong. Look, the weakest among them is at the fairy realm. With such strength, they would be among the top figures in the city. Moreover, there are more than 30 of them. I wonder what these people did to provoke such a group of people. It seems like it will be difficult for them to survive. Those cultivators discussed in low voices, and did not see that behind them, a green figure was slowly walking over with a child in her arms. She heard those people's words and saw the scene in front of her. When she saw that second master Bai was slashed several times for protecting the two children, her eyes flashed. She handed the children in her hands to the steward behind her, and flashed out. The steward carried the child, and watched as his master rushed out, and joined the battle. He opened his mouth, and was about to say something, wondering if he should go back and call for help. Then, he saw a terrifying aura spread out in an instant. That powerful and terrifying pressure instantly slowed down everyone's movements. Some people even stiffened their bodies, and were unable to move. It was as if there were pairs of hands in the air that were tightly holding them down. In just an instant, they saw a green figure flash past them. Before they could even see who it was, they felt a pain in their throats. Warm blood spurted out from their necks, and splashed onto their hands. At that moment, everyone's eyes widened in shock and horror. Under the black cloth, they all opened their mouths in disbelief. They wanted to shout out, but they couldn't make a single sound. Chapter 2398. The green robe fluttered in the wind as the green figure stood firm. The surrounding black-robed men collapsed one by one. This scene stunned the people at the city gate. Some of them were so shocked by the scene that their legs turned to jelly, and they almost knelt down. Some of them widened their eyes and swallowed their saliva. They could only hear their hearts thumping wildly. Such an impossible thing actually happened right in front of them. This green-robed man, who exactly was he? How could he kill over 30 experts in an instant? They could only hear the rumbling echoes in their ears. Their minds were blank, and they could only see the green figure in front of them. Hun Yuanzi and Zhuo Juanyue knew that she was very powerful, and had no problem killing these people. Therefore, They were not surprised that she could kill them in an instant. However, the second master of the Bai family was dumbfounded. He completely forgot that his wounds were still bleeding. He only knew that it was a wise decision for him to ask this young master to protect him along the way. If it wasn't for him, they probably wouldn't have survived. Feng Jiu glanced at the corpses on the ground and saw that Zhuo Junhua had already collected all the valuables on their bodies with familiarity. Over 30 Qianquan bags and over 30 interspatial rings were all placed in front of her. The items are all here. Zhuo Junhua passed the items to her. He knew that she would definitely want more after killing them. Although these people did not have much to take from them, there were still many valuable items. Especially at this level of power, there would be even more treasures in the space. Seeing him pass the items to her, she narrowed her eyes and revealed an appreciative smile. Not bad. You're getting more and more familiar with what I want to do. She praised him as she took the items and kept them in the space. However, with a turn of her hand, she took out a bag of gold coins and looked at the rogue cultivators around her. I need a few people to deal with these corpses. Is there anyone willing to help? Me. When the rogue cultivators heard her, they immediately raised their hands and shouted. Even if there was no reward, it was only right for such a powerhouse to work for him. Moreover, a powerhouse who could kill so many powerhouses in an instant was definitely qualified for them to do such a thing. Seeing this, Feng Jiu threw the money bag to them. Divide it. Thank you, Venerable One. A few rogue cultivators smiled happily and immediately moved the corpses away. At this moment, the steward who was carrying the child walked up to Feng Jiu and returned the child to her. Master, the young master is here. Feng Jiu took it and said to him, You can go back first. Do what I asked you to do immediately. Yes, I'll do it right away. The steward bowed respectfully before returning to the city. On the other side, Han Yuanzi looked at the second master and said, If you continue to bleed like this, you won't be able to make it to 100 Rivers City alive. Okay, I will do it immediately right now. The second master came back to his senses and took out medicine and a strip of cloth to treat the wound. After today's battle, 2 guards had died here. Now only the 3 of them were left. Chapter 2399. You're both men. How can you be so afraid when you're hugging each other like this? Are you going to hide behind someone else when you encounter something in the future? After the 2 children heard her words, their bodies clearly trembled, and they lowered their heads, not knowing what to do. Let's go. From now on, let the 2 of them fly on their own. As soon as she finished speaking, she threw out the rainbow-glazed feather and jumped on it with Hao-Er in her arms. Seeing this, Han Yuanzi and Zhuo Junhua also flew on their weapons. Second Master Bai looked at the 2 children with some worry and encouraged them. It's okay. Second Master is here. You can fly on your own. Second Master will guard behind you. When the 2 children heard this, they nodded. They also had flying magic tools, so they took them out and used their spiritual power to fly. Because their speed was not fast, they could only barely follow behind Feng Jiu and the others. On the way to 100 River City's heavenly pill building, Feng Jiu intentionally or unintentionally trained the 2 children to learn how to be independent. From the initial timidity and fear in their hearts to the end, they were calm and fearless. It could be said that this journey was not long, but it allowed the 2 children, who were 7 or 8 years old, to quickly grow up. Halfway, Zhuo Junhua and Feng Jiu went their separate ways. They first went to the family clan, while Feng Jiu and Han Yuanzi brought the Bai family to 100 River City. This is 100 River City. You can chat while flying on your weapons. This journey isn't very far, right? Han Yuanzi smiled as he looked at the Bai family members. Because of the disaster that had befallen their families, it was difficult for them to relax. However, when they saw him smiling and asking, Second Master Bai also smiled and nodded. Fortunately, we have the 2 of you protecting us along the way. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't be here now. After those people lost more than 30 experts, they didn't send anyone to chase after us. I think they won't appear in a short period of time, especially after arriving at the Heavenly Pill Building. You can rest assured that in the Heavenly Pill Building, No one will dare to attack the ghost doctor's people in her territory. Han Yuanzi smiled and comforted them, telling them not to worry too much. However, after hearing Han Yuanzi's words, Second Master Bai's face was filled with worry. I'm afraid that it's difficult for the ghost doctor to take in Qingqing's two younger brothers. After all, I heard that Qingqing did something very rude to the ghost doctor. I'm afraid. Don't worry too much, don't worry too much. That ghost doctor isn't that petty. Han Yuanzi waved his hand with a smile and looked at Feng Jiu with narrowed eyes. Don't you think so? Hearing the conversation between the two, Feng Jiu Yuan did not interrupt. Now seeing the old man squinting at her with a smile, she could not help but raise her eyebrows, glanced at the second master and the two children and said, if the ghost doctor does not take them in, what are you going to do? Feng Jiu looked away, and her gaze fell on the front. She slowly said, the Heavenly Pill building is in front. When the two children heard Feng Jiu's words, their eyes lit up and they couldn't help but ask, young master, does that mean we can see elder sister? Yes, your elder sister works in the Heavenly Pill building, Feng Jiu said without turning her head. Chapter 2400. They hadn't seen their sister for a long time. And now that their closest relatives were right in front of them, the two 7 or 8-year-old children were so excited that they felt sad along the way, that they started to run quickly towards the Heavenly Pill building. In the building, Bai Qingqing was greeting the guests when she saw two small figures running in from outside and pouncing on her. Sister! They called out in unison, and everyone in the Heavenly Pill building looked at them. Yang Xiao who was at the side, saw the two children hugging Bai Qingqing and calling out to their sister. After taking a look, he walked forward and said to the guest, young Masterly, please come in. What medicine did you say you wanted just now? I'll get it for you. The man glanced at Bai Qingqing and nodded. He said to Yang Xiao, then I'll have to trouble you, Miss Yang. Then he followed Yang Xiao inside. Bai Qingqing glanced at Yang Xiao, who was leading the guests away. Then, she squatted down and looked at her two younger brothers. She asked, why are you here? Who brought you here? Why would father let you come to such a faraway place? Hearing their sister's questions, the two 7 or 8-year-old children could not help but tear up. Sister, our family is gone. Father is gone too. Uncle and the others are gone too. Sob. At the mention of this sad matter, the two of them could not help but stand there and wipe their tears. When Bai Qingqing heard this, her body trembled. What happened? Why did you say that our family is gone? What's going on? Qingqing. Second Master Bai walked in from outside and looked at Bai Qingqing, who was squatting beside the two children and hugging them. Second Grandpa. Seeing him, Bai Qingqing's face gradually turned pale. This was because Second Grandpa was guarding the family treasure. He did not go out easily. Now he was actually here. Second Grandpa, what happened in the clan? She asked in a trembling voice. The white Second Master sighed softly. It's a long story. Let me tell you in detail later. Come, thank this young master first. If it wasn't for him protecting us all the way to the Heavenly Pill building, I'm afraid we would have been intercepted and killed on the way, not to mention bringing your brothers to see you. Second Master Bai turned around and looked at the green figure, who was slowly walking over with the child in his arms. He asked Bai Qingqing to step forward and thank him. Bai Qingqing was stunned when she saw the figure. She mumbled, Master. What master? Second Master Bai was stunned for a moment and didn't react. Second Grandpa, she is my master. She is also the owner of the Heavenly Pill House, Ghost Dr. Feng Jiu. As Bai Qingqing spoke, her beautiful eyes looked at the figure in green with an indifferent expression. She had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Was it Mistress who protected her two younger brothers and second grandfather to come here safely? Was it Master who saved her family? She immediately knelt down and respectfully kowtowed to Feng Jiu. Qingqing, thanks, Master. Thank you for saving Qingqing's family. Although she didn't know what had happened, since second grandpa said so, Master must have saved them from danger on the way. Bai Qingqing would never forget this great kindness. Feng Jiu walked in with the child in his arms. He glanced at Bai Qingqing on the ground and second master Bai, who was stunned. He said, "Bring your second grandpa and brothers to the backyard to talk." As he spoke, he walked past them. Chapter 2401. Second Master Bai's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the figure in green walking away. Didn't they say that the ghost doctor liked to wear red? Didn't they say that the ghost doctor's personality was unpredictable and her methods were ruthless? How could it be this elegant young master who exuded a noble aura? Along the way, he had seen her fight and knew that her strength was unfathomable. But he never thought that the person who had saved and protected them along the way was actually the ghost doctor Fengjiu. Yes, she is my master. Bai Qingqing stood up and glanced at the figure, who had already walked towards the loft. Then, she said to her second master, "Second master, let's go to the backyard to talk." The few of them went to the backyard. Leng Hua and the rest followed Fengjiu to the loft. Han Yuanzi went to the wine shop to buy wine, and did not follow them in. "Master, where did you bring this child from?" Du Fan looked at the child in Fengjiu's arms and asked curiously. "I picked him up along the way." A smile appeared on Fengjiu's face. She teased the child in her arms and instructed him. "Find a wet nurse later, so that it'll be easier to take care of Hao in the future." "Hao? Yes, I named him Xinyuan Hao. In the future, he will be my and Moses' son." She gently tapped the child's little mouth in her arms. When she saw him giggle, she also chuckled softly. When the others heard this, they could not help but look at each other. Master and the Yama Lord's son? If the Yama Lord came back and saw such a big son, he would probably be shocked. Leng Hua pondered and said, "Master, we have enough people in the residence. It's not a big problem to help take care of the little master. I think a wet nurse is dispensable. Moreover, didn't Master say that the child can also be fed goat milk?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his brows. "It hasn't been very peaceful recently. There were some people who wanted to take the opportunity to sneak into our ranks. Since Master wasn't around, we caught 2 of them," Leng Hua said. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded. "All right, then let the people in the estate help take care of him. The people in the mansion are all trustworthy, so I can rest assured if I leave it to them. Yes, I'll get someone to buy 2 sheep and raise them in the back of the mountain," Leng Hua said. "By the way, Master, what's going on with Bai Qingqing? Why did I vaguely hear something about something happening in the clan?" Du Fan asked doubtfully, holding the fan in his hand. "It's said that something happened to the Bai clan. They were exterminated, and only a few of them managed to escape." As Fengjiu spoke, he handed the child in his arms to Leng Hua and continued, "I met the 3 of them on the road and learned that they were Bai Qingqing's family, so I brought them back." She stood up and walked to the window with her hands behind her back, saying, "I already sent people to investigate the matter of the Bai clan being exterminated. When the news comes back, remember to bring it to me." "Yes," they replied, then looked at each other. They were a bit surprised. The Bai clan was also a clan with deep roots. They never thought that they would be exterminated like this. "Leng Hua, take Hao back to the Feng Manor and take care of him. I'll be back later." She turned around and gave orders to Leng Hua, who was holding the child. "All right," Leng Hua replied, then left with the child. Chapter 2402. However, after more than a year of experience in the Heavenly Elixir building, her mind had calmed down a bit. She knew that this wasn't the time to be sad. She forced herself to be spirited and held back her tears. "Second grandpa, who exterminated our clan? I don't know either. I only know that these people are very powerful." Second elder Bai sighed and said, "Now is not the time to find out who the enemy is. We should think of a way to survive." He looked at her solemnly. "With our strength, we can't fight against those people. As long as we leave the Heavenly Pill House's ghost doctor's side, I'm afraid we'll be killed in less than the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. Now, only the 3 of you and this old man are left in the Bai family. What we need to think of is how to survive the ambush. Sister, the people who chased after us on the way here are very powerful. It was that sir who protected us along the way that allowed us to survive. He's very powerful. With him around, those people wouldn't dare to appear." Two tender voices spoke. The two of them tugged on Bai Qingqing's sleeve and raised their heads to look at her. Hearing this, Bai Qingqing's heart skipped a beat. She looked at her two younger brothers, and then looked at her second grandfather. After a long while she asked, "Second grandfather, if we enter the four major immortal sects, won't the four major immortal sects' reputation be able to protect Yun Qi and Yun Lin?" Second elder Bai shook his head. "With that kind of power, I think it's very likely that he's not from the upper mainland. He could be a powerful cultivator from overseas." Hearing this, Bai Qingqing pursed her lips. A look of determination appeared on her beautiful face as she said, "Second grandfather, I'll beg master." She knew that if even the four major immortal sects were unable to protect them, only master would be able to. "That's what I thought too," second elder Bai said and looked at her. "On the way here, I thought of asking the ghost doctor to take us in. Furthermore, we didn't know that Sir was the ghost doctor Fengjiu. So when he asked us what our plans were, I told him my plan. Now that the ghost doctor has found us here, I think that as long as we ask for her, she'll agree." "I'll go now," Bai Qingqing said, and was about to head to the loft in front. "I'll go with you." Second master Bai also stood up and instructed the two children to wait here. Then he walked forward with Bai Qingqing. However, before they reached the attic, they bumped into Du Fan, who was coming down from the attic. "Are you looking for master?" Du Fan stopped and asked. "Yes, I have something to ask of you, master," Bai Qingqing said, lowering her head slightly. Seeing this, Du Fan looked at the two of them and said, "If you want to see the master because of the three of you, then I can tell you that you don't need to go up." Hearing this, Bai Qingqing and second master Bai's hearts sank. Was this a rejection? Seeing the two's changing expressions, Du Fan knew that the two had misunderstood. He smiled and opened the fan in his hand, gently fanning himself. "Master told you to take care of them. Later, bring them back to the Feng Manor. Just have them stay in the Feng Manor." Once these words were said, the two could not help but be stunned. Their faces showed that they did not know how to react. Bai Qingqing looked at Du Fan in astonishment. "Master, did you just agree to let my second grandpa and two younger brothers stay?" Chapter 2403. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and patted his head with his fan. "That's right. Master said that Hunyuanzi went to buy wine and asked you to wait for him to return. Also, when you return, ask the people in the residence to prepare some dishes to go with the wine. She wants to have a few cups of wine tonight." "Yes, I understand." Bai Qingqing's face overflowed with a smile as the tears in her eyes fell uncontrollably. While she was smiling, she was crying at the same time. The tears that she wiped away could not be wiped clean. When Du Fan saw this, he smiled and said, "You don't have to laugh and cry at the same time. People who don't know will think that I'm bullying you. I've told you before that as long as you work hard and don't be disloyal, master will not mistreat his subordinates. Especially when master is very protective of his subordinates." "Thank you, big brother. Do I know that I, Bai Qingqing, will be loyal to master for the rest of my life. I will not be disloyal." She wiped away her tears and said in a firm voice, Go. He gestured and went downstairs. He was going to ask someone to buy 2 sheep from the market to raise them. "Second grandfather, let's wait for Senior Hunyuanzi to return first," Bai Qingqing said to her second grandfather, who was still standing beside her in a daze. "Oh, okay." It took a while for the second grandfather to regain his senses. He did not expect that the ghost doctor would agree to let them stay even before they asked. At this moment, it would be a lie to say that he was not moved. When they were at their wits' end, it was the ghost doctor who opened the door and gave them a way out. He secretly made up his mind that from now on, his old life belonged to the ghost doctor Fengjiu. Hunyuanzi went to the wine shop to buy some good wine and added some spiced beef. He was prepared to have a good drink with Fengjiu and the others tonight. However, when he entered the heavenly pill house, he saw Bai Qingqing, who was waiting by the door to welcome him. "Senior Hunyuan." Bai Qingqing stepped forward and bowed, looking at him with a smile on her face. "What are you doing?" Hunyuanzi narrowed his eyes and stared at her. He felt that this little girl's eyes were red and swollen with tears. Yet there was a smile on her face. It was very strange. Senior, Master has agreed to allow my second grandfather and younger brother to stay. She also wants you to accompany us back to the Feng Manor. Master said that she wants to have a few drinks with Senior tonight. Now when we return, have the servants prepare some dishes. Bai Qingqing gently said. Han Yuan stroked his beard and nodded. So that's how it is. All right, let's go. He turned around and walked out. When Bai Qingqing saw this, she called her second grandfather and two younger brothers and followed Han Yuanzi to the Feng Manor. Seeing them leave, Fan Lin, who had come out from inside, smiled and said to the person at his side, "Our master is just too soft-hearted. Look, she had them go to the Feng Manor, yet she was worried that they would run into danger along the way. She specifically had Senior Primordial Chaos go with them. Master is that sort of person. It's not like you don't know. That's right. Master has never mistreated her own people. This Bai Qingqing's performance over the past year has been quite good. Since her arrogance and sharpness have been worn away, she has loyally worked for Master. Master naturally will not mistreat her." Hearing their words, an old man who was picking up medicinal ingredients in the back narrowed his eyes. He glanced up at the pavilion and revealed a smile. Chapter 2404. Originally, there weren't many people in the Heavenly Dan building, but gradually, there were more and more people in the open and in the dark. As long as they followed her, none of them would have second thoughts, because she let everyone who followed her know that as long as they did their jobs well, as long as they were loyal, she would not treat anyone unfairly. As long as someone was in trouble, as long as she knew, she would definitely help them. Those spiritual pills that were rare even in some aristocratic families, she would distribute them to her subordinates without hesitation. As for those magical tools and treasures, as long as they were useful to her subordinates, she would never be stingy. How could such a master not convince her subordinates? How could she not make them unswervingly loyal? The news of Fengjiu's return was known to Nalan Emochen. Therefore he came to Feng Manor in the evening. However, when he arrived at Feng Manor, Fengjiu still hadn't returned from Heavenly Pill Building. At the same time in Heavenly Pill Building, Song Qing, who was at the peak of Immortal Venerable Realm, and three other Immortal Venerables, quietly came to the pavilion of Heavenly Pill Building. When they flew through the air and entered the pavilion through the window, they saw Fengjiu sitting in the pavilion. They stepped forward and saluted. "Master." They were all people she had subdued in the floating land. Originally, she didn't expect to mobilize them so quickly. However, after learning that something had happened to her elder brother, and that even the Phoenix Guards couldn't find any news or whereabouts, she secretly released a message to let them investigate in secret. "How is it? Is there any progress?" Fengjiu sat in front of the desk, gathered the information and looked at them. "Master, after we learned about the message you secretly released, we also secretly spread it and let our subordinates investigate. In a few days, we found out that the person Master is looking for is indeed among the demons," one of them said. Song Qing found a place to sit down and said, "We originally wanted to sneak in and rescue him, but we didn't expect that the demons' territory wasn't so easy to enter. So we only let some evil cultivators sneak in and got a map of their interior." While speaking, he handed over the map he got from his sleeve. "This is the map of the demons. With it, Master can attack whenever you want." Fengjiu took a glance at the map and put it away. He asked, "So my elder brother is imprisoned among the demons? Then, the person who has been committing crimes outside is a fake evil cultivator?" "He's not an evil cultivator, but one of the 10 demons under the Devil Lord, the 1,000 Faces illusory demon. Although he is called evil, he doesn't cultivate the evil path, so he doesn't have any evil qi. However, his strength is indeed very strong. It's no wonder that your elder brother was defeated by him." As Song Qing spoke, his eyes fell on Fengjiu, and an inexplicable light flashed in his eyes. "Master, if it weren't for the mission you secretly released this time, we wouldn't have known that your reputation is so resounding outside. It really gave us a shock." When the other three heard this, their eyes flashed with respect and worship. "Yes, We also didn't expect that Master would have the title of Ghost Doctor outside. Moreover, your reputation is so resounding that you can hear of Master's great achievements everywhere. Chapter 2405. Yes, they responded and left in the same way they came. After investigating the matter, Fengjiu called for Du Fan and gave him some instructions before heading to the Feng Manor. Inside the Feng Manor, Fire Phoenix, Old White, and the other contracted beasts were all looking at the child in the cradle. Staring at the child's chubby appearance, Old White tilted his head and said, "He doesn't look like Master at all." Tun Yun, who was beside him, rolled his eyes when he heard that. He opened his mouth and yawned. This is a son that Master picked up and brought back. He's not Master's son. How can they look alike? If they looked alike, Yama Lord would cry. But to be picked up by Master and be recognized as his son, his luck is not ordinary. Fire Phoenix flapped its wings and landed next to the cradle. Looking at the baby who was looking at them curiously, it felt very strange. This was the first time Master had brought back such a small thing. To the side, the shrunken black bear sat there in a daze. It stared blankly at the little human in the cradle, its mind thinking about what they had said. This is Master's son. Little White Tiger looked around, and sometimes sat down. It looked at the other beasts, and then looked at the little thing in the cradle, that was even smaller than itself. It let out a cry. Lung Shuang stood to the side and watched. Nalan Mo Chun and Hun Yuanzi sat at the table drinking wine and chatting. When Fengjiu returned, the sky had already darkened. When she arrived at the courtyard, the food and wine had already been set up. Seeing Nalan Machin and the old man chatting happily, she chuckled and walked up to them. "Did you come as soon as you knew I was back?" Nalan Emochin looked at her. His gaze lingered on her for a while before he smiled warmly. "It's hard to see you. I came here a long time ago and waited until now." She walked forward and sat down. Lung Shuang poured her a cup of wine and retreated to the side. "I just came back. It'll be dark soon after I briefly explain the matters in the building." She picked up her chopsticks and picked up some food. "Let's talk while eating. I have something to tell you." At the dining table, they ate and drank at the same time. Fengjiu also told them that Guan Shilin was being held captive by the demons. After hearing Fengjiu's words, the two were slightly surprised. "How did you find out?" "The demons are not an ordinary force. Not many righteous Dao cultivators are able to enter, let alone find out what's inside. I have my ways." She smiled mysteriously as a cold glint flashed in her eyes. "That's why I've decided to go to the demons to save them. At the same time, I'll destroy these demons. Demons who dared to lay their hands on her elder brother must not be allowed to live. Are you confident that you can defeat the demons?" Emochin looked at her and said warmly, "Although several of the 10 demons under the Demon Lord's command have died at your hands, the Demon Lord's strength and the strength of the other demonic cultivators in there are not to be underestimated. Moreover, if you don't have a thorough plan, you won't be able to destroy them easily." Hun Yuanzi stroked his beard and pondered. He also said, "According to what I know, the Demon Lord is extremely powerful. Even the 4 great immortal emperors dare not say that they can destroy him. Although you're also an immortal emperor now, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to defeat the Demon Lord." Chapter 2406. Of course not. It's just that we feel we should have a foolproof plan to avoid suffering losses when the time comes. Fengjiu nodded. "Don't worry. I know what to do." "That's right. I feel that your son's background isn't ordinary. If you adopt him, I'm afraid he'll bring you trouble in the future," Emochin said, his gentle and deep gaze landing on the child surrounded by several contracted beasts. Fengjiu's eyes flashed as he glanced at the child. Seeing him giggle under Old White and the other beasts teasing, he couldn't help but smile. "It's fine. Since he's my son, I'll naturally protect him. If there's trouble, I'll deal with it." "That's right. I heard that Ishiran is here. Why haven't I seen him tonight?" Fengjiu recalled that cultivator called Ishiran. They'd only met once and hadn't expected him to come to her place. Then, he heard Du Fan say that he'd been waiting for her for a long time. Hearing this, Lung Shuang, who was at the side, spoke up. Master, that person has always been in the residence. These days when Master was not around, he was well behaved and did not do anything excessive in the residence. However, he said that he had something to attend to the day before, and has not returned since. Fengjiu nodded. Tell him to come see me when he's back. Yes, Lung Shuang replied and retreated to the side. They didn't chat very late that night. Imochen knew they'd just returned, and told them to rest early after their long journey. He left first. On the other side, in the main hall of the demon clan, the demon lord, who was wearing a mask and whose face could not be seen, was reclining on the main seat. He was playing with two beads that were emitting light in his hands. His gloomy and bloodthirsty eyes were blood red. At this moment, he was staring at the demonic cultivator, who was kneeling down and reporting to him. Oh, so those so-called 4 great immortal sects and other sects really can't do anything to Heavenly Pill Pavilion's ghost Dr. Fengjiu? You don't dare to attack her? His voice was gloomy and filled with a dangerous aura. His expression couldn't be seen, so no one knew what he was thinking. Yes, Devil Lord. Those people are all afraid of Fengjiu and respect that ghost Dr. Fengjiu. It is said that this ghost Dr. Fengjiu is the star of the phoenix that Tianji Elder once spoke of, which is also the ruler of the world. The devil cultivator below did not dare to raise his head as he lowered his head and spoke respectfully. Phoenix star? Hee interesting. The 2 egg-sized pearls in the demon lord's hand were gently turning. His cold and sinister voice rang out. That little girl who is still wet behind the ears? Just say that it was the Phoenix star? She's just slightly outstanding in alchemy, and she used alchemy to increase her strength. That's how she became an overlord. Phoenix star? Ha! Could it be that a mere woman like her dares to go against us demons? When the demonic cultivator below heard this, he hurriedly said, Of course she wouldn't dare. Otherwise, why didn't she come to save her brother when he was in our hands? It can be seen that she's also afraid of you, Devil Lord, and doesn't dare to suddenly attack. Chapter 2407. Speaking of which, that Guan Shilin has been in the Black Dungeon for quite some time. Is he still alive? Reporting to the Demon Lord, that Guan Shilin is also a tough nut to crack. He's still alive, even though he's locked up in a place like the Black Dungeon. This subordinate heard that 2 days ago, he killed another demonic cultivator in the Black Dungeon. No one dares to touch him in there anymore. To be able to survive in such a place, he's indeed a good talent. It's a pity that he doesn't listen to orders. The demon lord on the main seat said, as if he was talking to himself. When the demonic cultivator below heard this, he didn't dare to say anything, and just quietly knelt down. Go. Have someone bring that Guan Shilin to me. I want to use him to try out the cultivation method that I've recently learned. He waved his hand and signaled for the demonic cultivator to leave. Yes. The demonic cultivator respectfully replied, and retreated step by step until he was outside the hall. Then, he stood up and turned to leave. At the same time, in the demon's black dungeon, Guan Shilin, who was covered in blood and tattered clothes, was leaning against a wall and resting with his eyes closed. This was the Black Dungeon, where the demons imprisoned demonic cultivators who had committed crimes. Inside was a cage made of black iron, but this cage was as big as a courtyard. There were more than 100 demonic cultivators imprisoned here, and all of them were extremely vicious people. This place couldn't see the sun, and only a faint ray of light shone in from the inside of the Black Dungeon. In here, even a cultivator with a high cultivation base, who could see things in the dark, would find it difficult to see things clearly. In here, one must always be vigilant because no one knew who would suddenly attack and kill someone in the next moment. The demonic cultivators inside stared at the figure resting in the corner of the wall, and the bloodthirst in their hearts rose again. They didn't know where this person came from. Ever since he was locked up, many people wanted to kill him. However, in the end they all died at his hands. Perhaps they were shocked by his strength, or perhaps they were afraid of his methods. 2 days ago, another demonic cultivator, who didn't believe in heresy, found him, and was killed. No one here dared to attack him again. However, even so they were still unwilling. At this moment, a few demonic cultivators were discussing in low voices, as they quietly surrounded him. It wasn't like they didn't have any weapons here. The only thing they could use as weapons were the bones of dead devil cultivators. Everyone here had a sharpened bone in their hands. This was their weapon, their self-defense, and their killing weapon. When those devil cultivators suddenly pounced forward and raised the sharp bones in their hands to stab Guanxilin, who was originally resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened them. His sharp and intimidating gaze burst forth with a terrifying light. A low shout filled with chi was heard. He grabbed the wrist of a devil cultivator with one hand and exerted force in his hand. His profound energy aura was activated along with his attack, and he forcefully broke the other party's hand. The sound of bones breaking rang out. It was unusually crisp. When the screams sounded, they were quickly silenced. It was as if the person who screamed had been silenced in the next moment. Chapter 2408. Hiss! Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out as the thick smell of blood filled the air. A figure was ruthlessly thrown against the wall. Following that, Guanxilin's tightly clenched fist, which contained a powerful profound energy aura, suddenly struck down. Bang! When the punch landed, the demonic cultivator screamed in agony. At the same time his chest shattered. The surrounding demonic cultivators also heard a muffled bang, and the sound of tremors coming from the wall when the punch landed. It was as if the wall had cracked because of the punch, and cracking sounds could be heard coming from it. In the darkness, Guanxilin snatched a white bone from a devil cultivator's hand. With a backhand stab, he pierced the devil cultivator's throat at a speed that was too fast for the ears to react. He was a profound cultivator, especially in close combat. In terms of strength, spirit cultivators were no match for him. Even if a few devil cultivators joined forces, it would be difficult for them to gain the upper hand against him. What's more, after being imprisoned here, he had been constantly fighting. His strength had increased, and his combat effectiveness had also increased. It could be said that being captured this time was a trial for him, but it also stimulated his combat effectiveness more and more in this place. Especially at this moment, when he saw that the wall made a gotcha sound after his punch, and after cracks appeared, his eyes flashed, and his fist once again condensed a strong profound energy aura, and he fiercely punched out once again. During the time he was imprisoned here, it wasn't that he didn't think of breaking through this wall. It was just that when he tried in the past, it only cracked a little, and he saw that the back was also black iron. Now that he heard this sound, could it be that this wall was different from the walls he had hit before? With a thought, after he killed the devil cultivators, he condensed a profound energy aura on his fist and punched down. The wall was sent flying as cracks spread in all directions. And at the place he hit, a hole gradually appeared, about a few meters deep. Looking at the hole that was getting deeper and deeper, his heart trembled. He knew that as long as he could break through here, there would definitely be an exit. The other devil cultivators looked at him in the darkness, and couldn't help but be surprised. What is he doing? Is he crazy? This is Black Prison. Could it be that he wants to escape? That's not right. Look, that wall seems to be different from the other walls. Some devil cultivators exclaimed in a low voice. Looking at the wall, they became excited. Could it be that this wall is different from the other places? There's no black iron behind it? It must be. This hole is actually a few meters deep. If we can break through here, we can definitely escape. Thinking of this, all the devil cultivators became excited. Being imprisoned here was already a dead end. They knew very well that it was impossible for the demon lord to let them out alive. Now that there was a glimmer of hope, they couldn't help but have a glimmer of hope. The commotion inside the black prison was naturally noticed by the people outside, so they sent people in to check. However, at this time, many of the devil cultivators had united together. They surrounded the place where Guanxilin was hiding and bought him more time. What are you all doing? Are you trying to rebel? Chapter 2409. Oh no, they're trying to escape. Quick, report this to the Devil Master. A sharp-eyed demon cultivator noticed this and immediately shouted, ordering the people behind him to report this to the Devil Master. However, at this moment, there was a loud bang, and the sound of rocks rolling could be heard from the inside of the black dungeon. In an instant, a dazzling light was reflected from inside, causing the demon cultivators in the darkness to involuntarily block it with their hands. "It's through! It's through! Quick, run!" Surprised and excited voices could be heard. Hundreds of demon cultivators rushed out and fled towards the exit that Guanxilin had opened up. For a moment, the situation was out of control. Oh no! Exclamations could be heard. The demon cultivators outside the black dungeon also panicked. They wanted to chase after them, but the key to the black dungeon was not with them, so they could only quickly find someone to get the key. As the demon cultivators ran out, they shouted, "The people in the black dungeon have escaped. Quick, help us catch them." The person who was ordered by the Devil Master to bring Guanxilin to the front felt his legs go weak when he heard this. He grabbed one of them and asked, "Where's that guy with the surname Guan? Did you let him escape too?" They all escaped. One of the walls of the black dungeon was broken through, and those people escaped from the back. As soon as the demon cultivator finished speaking, his whole body was thrown out. "Go after them. Don't worry about the others, just catch that Guanxilin." Due to the escape of hundreds of people, the entire demons was in chaos. They sent people everywhere to catch the escaped prisoners. At the same time, when those people thought that Guanxilin would run away as soon as he escaped, they did not expect him to take advantage of the chaos, to sneak back to a place where he kept his weapons outside the black dungeon, and retrieve his long saber. Just as he was about to leave quietly, one of the demonic cultivators guarding the black dungeon turned back. When he saw Guanxilin holding a broadsword, he immediately opened his mouth and was about to shout. But who would have thought that before he could make a sound, blood would spurt out from his throat? With a kick of his foot, the chinquan pouch at the man's waist fell into his hand. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the spatial ring on the man's finger. He took it off and erased the imprint that belonged to the man. Searching through the spatial ring, he found the spatial ring that the man had snatched from his hand. "It's really effortless," he snorted softly, and used his divine sense to investigate. Seeing that everything that belonged to him was still inside, he immediately put the space ring back on his finger, and spun the large saber in his hand, before quickly walking out. Inside the Devil Palace, when the Devil Master found out that the black prison had been broken through, and the hundreds of prisoners had taken the opportunity to escape, the Devil Master's oppressive aura caused the reporting devil cultivator to spit out a mouthful of blood. "Escaped? You actually pierced through my black prison? Hee hee, you're really capable. You've really opened my eyes." His voice was gloomy and cold, causing the hair of those who heard it to stand on end. The devil cultivator below lowered his head to the ground, not daring to lift it up or back down. Large beads of cold sweat seeped out of his forehead, until his entire body could not withstand the Devil Master's oppressive aura and collapsed. "Drag this man down and feed him to the demonic beasts," he said in a gloomy voice, and ordered people to drag the fallen devil cultivator away. As soon as his voice fell, two devil cultivators appeared out of nowhere, grabbed the devil cultivator's legs, and dragged him out. Chapter 24:10. On the other side, Guanxilin captured a demon cultivator and forced him to tell him the way out of this place. Then, he killed the demon cultivator, changed into his clothes, and quietly sneaked into the forest along the path. The demon cultivator told him that besides the main road ahead, he could also get out of this forest. Although he did not elaborate, he knew that it was not that simple. However, he had no other choice at the moment. He could not go to the main road. After all, two fists were no match for four hands. Even if this forest was full of danger, he had to give it a try. However, as if they knew that he would take this path, several demon cultivators suddenly appeared and surrounded him when he arrived in front of the forest. "Guanxilin, don't even think about escaping from here. Quickly surrender and come back with us. Otherwise you'll suffer." A cold and bloodthirsty voice came from the leader of the demon cultivators. He was a celestial sage powerhouse. At this time, he was holding a long sword in his hand, and the pressure around him spread out. His aura pressed down on Guanxilin without any concealment. Surrender without a fight? Ha! That will depend on your abilities. Guanxilin snorted coldly. He stretched out his hand, and the saber that he had put away appeared in his palm with a whoosh. He waved the saber, and the aura around him surged. The sharp and cold saber aura shot out like snowflakes. The aura surged, and the murderous intent surged. The demon cultivators also attacked instantly, joining forces to attack Guanxilin. This person had killed so many demon cultivators, with extraordinary strength, in the Black Dungeon. Naturally, they did not dare to treat him as an ordinary opponent. In front of the forest, the shadows of sabers and swords flashed out. The biting cold battle chi spread out, and the powerful pressure condensed the air in this place. Under this pressure, both sides became more and more courageous. A demon cultivator stabbed his sword toward Guanxilin. However, in the next moment, Guanxilin bent over to dodge. He waved the saber in his hand and cut off the demon cultivator's legs. Whoosh! Hiss! Ha! When the sharp sound of air currents rang out, a sharp gasp followed by a miserable shriek rang out. The shriek was sharp and ear-piercing, mournful and painful. The shriek reverberated in the sky, causing the hearts of those who heard it to tremble. So, Guanxilin took advantage of the moment when the demonic cultivator, whose legs had been cut off, fell to the ground. He viciously stabbed the large saber in his hand, piercing through the demonic cultivator's heart at a speed that was too fast for anyone to react to. The eyes of the demonic cultivator on the ground were wide open. His hands were tightly gripping the sharp blade that had pierced his chest. His eyes were filled with shock and unwillingness. Blood flowed from his mouth, and he could not even scream. With a muffled groan, his body stiffened for a moment before collapsing, and he breathed his last "damn it." Seeing one of them killed, the eyes of the other demonic cultivators turned red. Anger rose in their hearts, and they only felt a sense of humiliation. With the four of them working together, if they couldn't take his life, it would be very difficult for them to explain to the Devil Master. Today, if they didn't die, then he would kill him. Bloodthirsty voices rang out, and the attacks of the demonic cultivators sped up. Every move was sharp and ruthless, and they wanted to kill Guanxilin. Chapter 24:11. Whoosh! Bang! Guanxilin's saber chi slashed down, and the ground exploded with a bang. A deep saber mark appeared on the ground, and the powerful airflow and pressure caused the two demonic cultivators, standing next to him, to bounce back. The two of them could not stop retreating, and their robes were torn apart by the saber chi, revealing their undergarments. At the same time, the wounds caused by the saber chi seeped with blood and dripped down from their bodies. They were unable to gain the upper hand even when they joined forces. On the contrary, they were covered in wounds, which made the demonic cultivators more and more annoyed as they fought. Their attacks were a little disorderly due to the exuberant fire in their hearts. Unexpectedly, this gave Guanxilin an opportunity to attack. He aimed at the demonic cultivators' attacks, only defending and not attacking, as if he was studying something. Then his eyes flashed. He moved and waved the saber in his hand, killing one of the demonic cultivators in one move. As he withdrew his saber, he swept it out again, and after exchanging a few blows with the other two, he unexpectedly killed another demonic cultivator. Seeing the demonic cultivators fall one by one, the remaining 2 or 3 demonic cultivators could not help but feel a little anxious. They faintly felt threatened and worried that they would be the next to fall. However, at this moment, just as they were about to retreat and call for reinforcements, they saw Guanxilin waving the saber in his hand. The tip of the saber glinted with a cold light as it flashed in front of their eyes, and they were so frightened that their hair stood on end. Want to escape? It's too late. Guanxilin turned the saber in his hand and changed his moves, becoming more and more fierce. He chased after them step by step, and they did not even have time to catch their breath. He seized the opportunity to attack with a thunderous blow, killing 2 of them in one fell swoop. Ah! Shrill screams rang out, and as blood splashed out, the two demonic cultivators fell to the ground. Almost at the same time, he strode forward and collected the space rings and other things from the corpses on the ground. Then, without stopping, he quickly walked into the forest. His figure leaped a few times and disappeared into the forest in a short while. When the demon lord arrived, it was already half an hour later. He looked at the corpses on the ground and narrowed his blood-red eyes, which flashed dangerously. Demon lord, I'll take some people to chase after him. We'll definitely catch him. One of the 10 demons spoke, and was about to lead a team into the forest to chase Guan Shilin, when he heard the demon lord's voice. No need. The demon lord narrowed his dangerous eyes, and his voice was filled with hostility. I've underestimated him. I didn't expect him to be able to escape from the black dungeon by himself. But it doesn't matter. Let him escape if he escapes, then let him escape. Whether or not we can get out of this forest is still unknown. 2. This demon, this lord, is to see. And yet they don't even dare to touch a mere woman. Hearing this, the eyes of the devil cultivator beside him twitched slightly. He raised his eyes and glanced at him, saying, "The devil master hasn't taken a step out of the devil race for nearly 100 years. Now that the devil master is going out, once the news spreads, it will definitely cause a commotion outside. Even the people of the 4 great immortal sects will probably be as anxious as ants on a hot pan." Chapter 24:12. His voice paused and his blood-red eyes narrowed. A vicious look flashed across his eyes. This lord is already impatient to see those people's panicked expressions. Yes, this subordinate will immediately go arrange it. The demonic cultivator complied and bowed before leaving. The demon master looked at the deep and serene forest, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He stretched out his hand and set up a barrier here, then turned and left. 3 days later, 100 River City's Feng Manor received more guests. This time, it was Zhuo Junyu and his younger brother, Zhuo Junyang. Feng Jiu had Leng Hua arrange for them to stay in a courtyard in the Feng Manor. On this day, Feng Jiu, who had finished her work, went to the courtyard Zhuo Junyu, and the others were staying in. "Is this place all right?" She walked into the courtyard and asked with a smile as she looked at the people in the courtyard. Zhuo Junyu saw that it was her and nodded at her. Zhuo Junyang revealed a smile. "I've troubled you. It's fine. Either way, the one taking care of you isn't me. I'm just a doctor." She winked at him, her voice carrying a bit of playfulness. "Thank you." Zhuo Junyang's face was slightly red as he thanked her with a smile. "As for the medicine, your brother has already prepared it. I've also prepared the other supplementary medicine. Today, I'll examine you first. Later, I'll make some ointment." She smiled as she walked forward and stopped in front of him. Zhuo Junyu went forward to help, rolling up his younger brother's pants for her to examine. The old man drank to the side and occasionally glanced at them with narrowed eyes. Feng Jiu examined him and said, Not bad. It seems like you've done what I told you last time." Zhuo Junyang nodded and said, "Yes, I've been taking medicinal baths every day." "All right. You've only just arrived today and haven't had a good rest. Rest well today. I'll bring the medicine over tomorrow." She looked at Zhuo Junyu and Zhuo Junyang as she spoke. "I'll have to trouble you. I'll go and concoct the medicine for you first. You don't have to be too restrained here. Just treat this place like your own home. If you need anything, just tell Leng Hua or Leng Shuang." After giving her instructions, she left first. Zhuo Junyang could not help but sigh as he watched her leave. "Big brother, Sister Feng is so nice to us." Although their grandfather was her master, if it had been someone else who had achieved so much, they might not have remembered the words of a dead person, let alone take care of them like this. Zhuo Junyu didn't say anything. He just helped him lower his pants. The old man at the side smiled and said, "That's right. Although this little girl's mind is strange and cunning like a fox, and she does things according to her preferences, her temperament is indescribable. When I can walk again, I will definitely repay Big Sister Feng," Zhuo Junyang said, his voice filled with determination. "Haha." The old man stroked his beard and chuckled. He glanced at him and said, You don't have to think about that. This little girl has many capable people by her side. She doesn't lack you. The few of them chatted in the courtyard. On the other side, Feng Jiu entered the alchemy room to refine pills and concoct medicine for Zhuo Junyang. This was because his legs would not be like this for a short period of time. Naturally, it would take time for them to recover. Moreover, the control of the medicine's effects had to be very precise. Chapter 24:13. Not long after Feng Jiu entered the pill refining room, Yi Xiran, who had not returned for a few days, also arrived at the Feng Manor. Upon entering, he asked, "I heard that Feng Jiu has returned? Where is she?" The servants in the courtyard told him that she was in the pill refining room. Thus, he strode over to the pill refinement courtyard. However, Lung Shuang and another cultivator were standing guard outside the courtyard. "Your master has returned?" Yi Xiran asked, his eyes looking towards the courtyard. Lung Shuang glanced at the unshaven Yi Xiran and said, "She's returned. I want to see her." As Yi Xiran spoke, he stepped forward but was stopped by a pair of hands. "Master is refining pills. If she doesn't come out, no one can enter." Lung Shuang spoke as a pair of cold, beautiful eyes landed on him. "Master told me to wait for her when you returned. She wants to see you." Hearing this, Yi Xiran's eyes flashed and a trace of surprise flashed through them. "She wants to see me? Why does she want to see me? Does she still remember me?" Speaking of this, his mood inexplicably soared. Seeing the smile on the person's face, Lung Shuang expressionlessly said, "Wait outside for now. Master will see you when she's done. As for the rest, you can ask her yourself." "How long has your master been inside? Approximately when will she come out?" Yi Xiran asked, his tone becoming gentler. "She just went in. It's hard to say when she'll come out." "All right then. I'll come back later." He did not stay any longer and turned to leave first. He planned to take a bath and change his clothes before coming back. However, he never thought that Feng Jiu would actually stay inside for so long after refining pills. She only came out of the pill refining room in the evening of the next day. Seeing her come out, Lung Shuang was the first to welcome her. "Master, the water has been prepared. Do you want to take a bath first?" She replied as she walked out. "Mistress, young Master Yi is back. He is waiting outside," Lung Shuang said as he followed beside her. Feng Jiu walked out and saw the figure sleeping on the tree. He was dressed in a purple robe with a jade belt around his waist. There was a blood-red jade pendant with a tassel hanging from it. He was dressed in luxurious clothes, just like an elegant and noble young master, who was pleasing to the eye. Perhaps it was her gaze that caught his attention. He suddenly opened his eyes and his sharp gaze met hers. In that instant, a hint of surprise appeared. Then, the sharpness in his eyes disappeared along with the smile on his face. "Feng Jiu, you're finally out." He jumped down from the tree and landed steadily on the ground. Then, he walked towards her with steady steps. "It's been a long time. Do you still recognize me?" His eyebrows raised slightly, and his eyes flashed with a deep light. "Yi Xiran," she slowly said, then asked, "Or is that not your name?" He chuckled. "I am Yi Xiran, which is my name. What? You remember me, but you're not sure? Could it be that I'm even more handsome and charming than I was a year ago? I remember that we weren't very close. However, how did you find me here?" she asked absent-mindedly as she walked towards her courtyard. Chapter 24:14. Is that so? Why don't I remember? She glanced at him. "Although I don't know why you approached me, I can't tolerate people with ulterior motives by my side. If you have ulterior motives, it's best if you leave as soon as possible and stay far away from me. Otherwise, if you fall into my hands one day, I won't be merciful." Yi Xiran sighed softly and said ambiguously, "Aren't you being too guarded against others? What ulterior motives could I have? Firstly, I don't seek wealth, secondly, fame, and thirdly, I don't seek power. If I really have any ulterior motives, then it would be towards you. Who asked you to be so pleasing to the eye? I heard from Lung Hua and the others that you've been living here for a long time. Since that's the case, you should know who I am and what relationship I have with the Ling residents next door. Therefore, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't have ulterior motives. I was just speaking casually. Moreover, with my strength, cultivation base, and temperament, how could I be someone who only cares about appearances? He scoffed and said, Oh right, when I returned this time, I heard a piece of news. Seeing that she didn't even have the intention to ask, he couldn't help but glare. It's related to the demons. Fengjiu paused and looked at him. Demons? He lowered his voice and said with a grave expression, That's right, it's demons. I heard that demons released news that they're going to flatten the 4 great immortal sects in a few days, because the demon lord, who hasn't appeared in 100 years, is coming out. Fengjiu frowned. Is the news reliable? Of course. Fengjiu pursed his lips and turned to Leng Shuang. Go. Have someone investigate what he said. Immediately report to me when you get the news. Yes. Leng Shuang responded and quickly turned to leave. Ishiran pursed his lips. You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, why are you asking me? Fengjiu glanced at him and said, This matter is of great importance. Naturally, I can't just listen to your side of the story. As she spoke, she walked forward. Ishiran snorted and walked beside her, occasionally saying a few words. When they arrived at the courtyard, he saw her suddenly stop and couldn't help but ask, What's wrong? Fengjiu looked at him strangely and said, I should be the one asking you what's wrong. I'm going to take a bath. Do you want to follow me? Hearing this, a trace of uneasiness flashed across Ishiran's face. Under her strange gaze, he coughed lightly and looked at her with a scorching gaze, revealing a frivolous expression as he said, If you invite me, I don't mind going with What are you doing? Before he could finish his words, he was kicked away by the other party. His body flew more than 10 meters away in an instant. Keep watch. If this person dares to break into the courtyard, cut off his penis. Fengjiu's cold voice rang out. She then turned and entered the courtyard, leaving behind 2 cultivators to guard the courtyard. The 2 cultivators guarding the courtyard looked at Ishiran and slowly moved their gazes down to his crotch. They asked, Do you want to try breaking in? Their expressions were somewhat expectant. Ishiran's mouth twitched. After steadying himself, he flicked his robes and said, I'll wait in the front courtyard. If you want to try, go ahead. Cut off his penis. TSK. This woman doesn't have any scruples with her words. In any case, she's a woman, isn't she? Chapter 24:15. After taking a bath, Fengjiu went to Zhuo Junyue's courtyard. When he entered, he saw Zhuo Junyang reading a book. Where's your brother? Sister Feng. Zhuo Junyang smiled and called out to her. He closed the book in his hand and said, My brother just went out. He'll be back soon. Hearing this, she nodded and walked forward to sit by the table. I've already refined the medicine. There are 10 pills in here. Take 1 pill every 3 days. Take 1 and consume it first. She handed him a bottle. Zhuo Junyue took it with both hands and poured out a fragrant pill. He swallowed it. As soon as the pill entered his throat, he felt the fragrance of the medicine spread in his throat and spread to his stomach. Have a cup of water. She poured a cup of water and handed it to him. Thank you. Zhuo Junyue took a sip and saw his brother walking in from outside the courtyard. He called out, Big brother, Sister Feng brought the medicine. Fengjiu turned around and said, You came just in time. Come and take care of him. You just have to help him change his medicine in the future. Zhuo Junyue nodded and walked over to them. He pushed his wheelchair-bound brother into the room. Fengjiu followed behind. When they entered the room, Zhuo Junyue was already leaning against the head of the bed with his legs stretched out. She took out the medicine from her space and demonstrated it to them, as she instructed them. This was the first time she bandaged him. She wanted them to understand. In the future, Zhuo Junyue would change the medicine for his brother. How is it? Have you memorized the steps? She wrapped the medicine in a cloth and tied a knot as she asked them. Got it. The 2 of them replied. Here are 10 jars of ointment. Change the ointment once every 3 days. It's almost time to use up all these ointment. In addition, I just gave Junyang a bottle of pills. Take 1 pill every 3 days. There's also a new prescription for a medicinal bath. He has to take it every day. She placed everything on the table as she instructed. Do as I say. If you're fast, you'll recover in a few months. If you're slow, it'll take more than half a year. In addition, for half a month after taking the medicine and applying the plaster, you have to get up and walk for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn every morning and evening. All right, Zhuojunyu responded, and put away the things on the table. He took the prescription and looked at it, saying, I'll go get the herbs later. Fengjiu nodded and said to the two, I have a lot of things to do recently, especially my brother's matter, so I might not be able to take care of you. Sister Feng, my brother will take care of me. You don't have to worry, Zhuojunyang said. If you need anything, just look for Leng Hua and the others. After she said that, she said to the two of them, I'll be leaving first. The moment she left the courtyard, she saw Ishiran leaning against a nearby tree and looking at her. When she saw him, she raised a brow. Is something the matter? Can't I find you for no reason? Ishiran walked over and asked, What do you plan to do next? Do you need my help with anything? Fengjia's eyes flickered. She looked at him and asked, You're not leaving? Are you planning to stay? Chapter 24:16. Hearing this, Fengjie stopped and said, Since you've said that, I do have something that I need your help with. Moreover, it's something that no one else can do besides you. Oh, what is it? Ishiran's eyes sparkled as he stared fixedly at her. Fengjie smiled. Follow me. Then he strode forward. 30 minutes later, Ishiran left mysteriously with the special mission Fengjie gave him. Other than Fengjie, no one else knew what the mission was. After he left, Fengjie, Mo Chen, Han Yuanzi, and the others discussed the matter of the demon master's appearance. I didn't expect Ishiran to be so well informed. I only just received the news. As Han Yuan spoke, he stroked his beard and looked at Fengjie. This Ishiran definitely isn't an ordinary person based on his bearing and strength. He claims to be an itinerant cultivator, but I think he must have some ulterior motive for hiding his identity. Fengjie smiled. I already had someone investigate his identity when I went back to save Zhuojunyu. Don't worry, he doesn't need to care too much. Oh, you even investigated? I heard from Leng Hua and the others that they couldn't find any information about him. You actually know his background. How did you find out? The old man asked with interest. Fengjie glanced at him and said with a spurious smile, I can even find out about your past affairs. Do you want to try? Hearing this, the old man smiled embarrassedly and waved his hand. Forget it. What romantic affairs do I have? Let's not talk about things that don't matter. Let's not talk about these unimportant things. Come, let's talk about this demon master. Seeing this, the surrounding people pursed their lips and smiled. It seemed that Han Yuan really did have a romantic past. Mo Chen sipped his tea. The demon master hasn't come out for more than 100 years. Now that news of him coming out has spread, all the sects and clans are nervous and worried. They're starting to take precautions. However, I heard that he'll attack the 4 major immortal sects first. That's right. I also heard from Ishiran that he'll attack the 4 major immortal sects first. I think he wants to intimidate everyone and show his strength to the various factions, so that they'll be terrified. Fengjie nodded and paused. If even the 4 major immortal sects are destroyed, then what else is there to say about the other factions? If he succeeds, the continent will descend into chaos. Then what do you plan to do? Mo Chen looked at her. I'm afraid this matter is definitely related to you. Moreover, the only person who can protect this continent and the 4 major immortal sects is you. Han Yuanzi nodded. That's right. You're the Phoenix Star and have such strength now. You have many experts under you. If we're talking about fighting the demons, then you're the only one in the entire continent. Moreover, I received news from my sect that they're asking for your help. I reckon that the other immortal sects will come looking for you soon. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.